You're about to learn something most people deny about themselves, that even the strongest minds are more likely to copy others than they'd ever admit. Whether it's in the way we dress, speak, sit, vote, or even breathe in a crowded room, our decisions aren't as independent as we think. This is what makes the psychology of conformity so unnerving. It's not loud, it doesn't shout, it whispers. And most of the time, we follow without asking why. Here's a question to sit with. How much of what you believe, truly believe, is yours? Not inherited, not absorbed, not modeled after someone else's opinion, but actually yours. Social pressure doesn't always come in the form of an argument. Sometimes it's just a beep in a waiting room. Everyone stands, no one explains, and without a word, you might find yourself rising with them. Not because you believe in it, not because you've thought it through, but because not standing up makes you feel exposed. You might scoff at that. Most people do. We like to believe we're rational, that we make our choices with clarity and conviction. But over and over, studies show that belief is mostly illusion. In a world where everyone is watching, or at least where we think they are, blending in becomes safer than standing out. And what begins as a small, harmless act of copying turns into a pattern that rewires how we behave and think, not just once, but every day. So let's walk through it. How do we get pulled into this current? Why does it feel so natural to match the rhythm of those around us? And more importantly, is there ever a moment we notice it happening? Or does the pull of conformity work best when we're not paying attention? Let's begin where this all became a little too real. Inside a quiet waiting room with nothing but a beep, a chair, and a group of strangers following a rule that didn't exist until it was copied.
To see if this woman would stand up at the sound of this tone, simply because everyone else is. You might be thinking you'd never go along with this. Or would you?
What you're seeing looks simple, just a waiting room, a beep, and people standing up. But watch closely. That one woman in the middle? She's not an actor. She has no idea what's going on. And yet, after a few rounds, she starts following along like it's completely normal.
Group. But what happens if we take the group away?
Elaine, please.
No one told her to. No one explained the rule. It didn't matter. Everyone else was doing it, and that was enough.
Okay, now she's alone. The crowd is gone, and nobody is watching her, except our hidden cameras. What do you think she'll do? She's now conforming to the rules of the group without them even being there.
Now the others leave. She's alone. But when the beep comes again, she still stands. That's the part that should really make you pause. The group is gone, but the behavior stays. It's been absorbed, quietly, without resistance. Then, something even more telling happens. A new guy walks in. He doesn't know the rule either. But after watching her a few times, he starts copying it too. Not because he believes in it, not because it makes sense, just because someone else was doing it.
Watch what happens when we introduce another outsider who doesn't know the rules.
Have a seat and they'll be out in just a couple minutes. Great, thanks so much.
Everybody was doing it, so I thought I was supposed to.
Think she'll teach the new guy what to do?
And that's how fast a behavior spreads, from nothing to norm to tradition without a single word being spoken. By the end, the original group is long gone, but the rule they made up in silence is still alive. That's not just social influence, that's how culture forms. This kind of behavior might seem odd when you see it laid out like that. But the truth is, copying others is baked into us, deeply. And it starts early. Psychologists call it social learning. From the moment we're born, we're wired to watch the people around us and mimic what they do, not just to survive, but to belong. That woman in the waiting room didn't stand up because she was weak or confused. She stood because her brain was doing exactly what it was designed to do. Look for cues, adapt, and fit in. There's this old quote from Solomon Asch, the psychologist behind one of the most famous conformity studies. He said that we have found the tendency to conformity in our society so strong that reasonably intelligent and well-meaning young people are willing to call white-black is a matter of concern. And he wasn't exaggerating. In his experiments, people sat in a group and were asked to match the length of lines, an easy task on its own. But when everyone else in the room gave the wrong answer on purpose, over 70% of participants went along with the group at least once, even when they knew the answer was wrong. Not because they suddenly believed it, but because disagreeing made them uncomfortable. Standing out, even quietly, feels like a risk. The urge to conform isn't always about logic. It's about harmony, or at least the illusion of it. And it's not just in psychology labs. This happens at work, in classrooms, online, at dinner tables. People agree to things they don't support. They stay silent when something feels off. They smile when they don't want to. And little by little, what's copied becomes what's expected. We're social creatures. That's not a flaw. It's part of our survival. But it also means we're constantly navigating this balance between what we really believe and what makes us blend in. So now that we've seen how quickly someone can fall in line, and we've unpacked the social side of it, let's talk about what's happening inside the brain when we copy others. This isn't just a matter of behavior. Your brain is actively shaping your choices based on what it sees people around you doing. When researchers at the University of Pennsylvania looked into this, they found that our brains actually reward us when we follow group behavior. The part of the brain responsible for learning from others, called the striatum, lights up when we mimic a group. It's the same part that responds when we eat something sweet or hear praise. So it doesn't just feel right to conform, it's chemically reinforced. Have you ever felt relief after agreeing with a group, even if you weren't entirely sure you believed what you said? That's part of this. The brain trades certainty for belonging. It prioritizes social safety. There's also something called mirror neurons. These are brain cells that activate when we observe someone else performing an action, as if we were doing it ourselves. It's why yawns are contagious. It's also why, in that waiting room, one person standing up can trigger an internal "me too" without a single word exchanged. And this mechanism doesn't switch off just because we grow up. Adults mirror behavior just as much as kids do. Watch how people adjust their speech depending on who they're around, or how laughter spreads in a group even when the joke isn't that funny. It's not manipulation, it's instinct. So ask yourself, how many of your daily actions are really based on your own judgment, and how many are automatic responses to what's around you? When everyone claps, do you clap because you want to, or because silence feels weird? Conformity isn't a surface-level quirk. It's embedded in how we're wired, which is why recognizing it in real time is so difficult. By the time we notice, we've usually already joined in. So far, we've looked at an experiment. But let's shift now to where this actually plays out, in your life, right now. Because the real question isn't whether we conform. It's how often we do it without realizing. This part's about recognizing where conformity shows up in the day-to-day. Not in some lab or a waiting room, but in actual decisions. What you post, what you laugh at, what you stay silent about. Think about how people behave in meetings. Maybe someone raises a concern and the room stays quiet. No one agrees. No one pushes back either. And then, 5 minutes later, someone else says the same thing, but this time the group nods. Nothing changed except the timing and who said it. That's conformity at work. People often hold back until they feel it's safe to join. Social media takes this to a different level. Scroll through your feed. Trends, challenges, slang. Most of what dominates the platform isn't original. It's repeated, replicated, shared because others are sharing it. You start seeing the same style of caption, the same dance, the same soundbite, and without even realizing it, your brain starts treating these as templates for what's acceptable, for what works, at work, in school, online, even among friends. There's usually an unspoken code, a way things are done, and most of the time, we fall in line with it. Not because it's right, not because we've thought it through, but because it's familiar, and because doing something different feels like a risk. This isn't about blaming yourself, it's about awareness. Just pause for a moment and ask, how many times have you said yes when you meant no, or stayed quiet because everyone else seemed fine with something that didn't sit right with you? We like to think we act from logic, but more often, we act from comfort. And the crowd is the most comfortable place to be. Here's something that doesn't get talked about enough. How quickly we shift from being the one who follows to the one who teaches others to do the same, without ever meaning to. Go back to that woman in the waiting room. She wasn't just following a strange pattern. Once the original group left, she became the pattern. A new person walked in, noticed her behavior, and copied it. No instructions, no dialogue, just observation and imitation. This is what psychologists call social transmission, the quiet way norms spread. And you've probably done this without even thinking about it. Ever laughed at a joke you didn't find funny just because everyone else did, and then someone new laughed too, looking to you for the cue? Or maybe you walked into a room, saw people putting their phones away, and did the same. You didn't ask why, you just noticed, copied, and moved on. And the next person behind you? They copied you. That's how fast it moves. You go from uncertain observer to unintentional guide, not because you wanted to lead, but because you looked like you knew what to do. And this is where it gets more serious, because it means even the behaviors we pick up passively can become part of someone else's operating system. One person shrugs off a comment, so the next person learns to ignore it too. Someone stays quiet during something uncomfortable, and that silence teaches others to do the same. So ask yourself, what are people learning from your reactions? From what you tolerate, mimic, or let slide? The power of conformity doesn't just shape your behavior, it echoes through others, quietly but constantly. Let's get honest about something. Conformity feels good until it doesn't. The moment you fall in line, there's a sense of ease, no tension, no second guessing. But here's the point we're focusing on now. What happens when that instinct to conform silences your own judgment? We've already seen how fast a behavior can spread just because someone copied it. But when does that go too far? When does copying become compliance, and compliance become damage? Think about the moments when someone in a group says something that doesn't sit right with you. Maybe it's subtle, an off comment, a half-truth, a clear mistake. And instead of speaking up, you tell yourself, it's not worth the trouble. You look around and no one else seems bothered. So you stay quiet. That silence? That's how bad ideas survive. Not because everyone agrees, but because no one interrupts them. In group settings, this kind of passive agreement is everywhere. People approve decisions they don't fully understand. They nod along in meetings just to keep the flow going, and the more it happens, the harder it gets to pull back. You don't want to be the one person raising a hand when everyone else seems fine. But that moment, right there, is where your judgment matters most. And it's not just about personal discomfort. This is how misinformation spreads. This is how people adopt harmful behavior, not out of belief, but because someone else made it look normal, because no one pushed pause. So here's the question you have to ask yourself. When something doesn't feel right, do you trust your gut? Or do you wait for someone else to break the silence first? Conformity isn't always loud. Sometimes it sounds like nothing at all. At this point, it's fair to ask, can we actually resist the pull to conform? Or are we just wired to go along with the group no matter what? That's what we're looking at here. How to recognize those moments when you're about to fall in line for the wrong reasons, and what it actually takes to step out of that rhythm. First, let's be real. Going against the crowd isn't a comfortable move. It's not romantic. It doesn't always feel powerful. In most situations, it feels awkward. It can make your heart race, your voice tighten, and yet, people do it. You've probably done it too. Maybe quietly, maybe once, but that moment matters. Here's the thing, resisting conformity isn't about being loud or confrontational. It's about being aware. Most people don't conform because they believe in the group's behavior. They conform because they aren't thinking about it. It happens on autopilot. The people who break that cycle usually do something simple. They pause. That's it. They notice what's going on, feel the pressure building, and pause long enough to ask, do I actually agree with this? Or am I just copying it? That small gap between action and reflection is where your agency lives. In one study, researchers found that when people were given just a few extra seconds to respond in a group setting, conformity dropped significantly. Just a few seconds. That delay gave them enough space to think for themselves. And look, this doesn't mean you have to challenge everything. Not every group behavior is bad. But the point is to stay awake in the moment. When you notice yourself agreeing quickly or repeating something you've heard without checking it, stop and ask yourself why. Because here's the truth, you're not just making decisions for yourself. You're teaching others what's okay. And sometimes the quietest form of leadership is the decision not to follow. By now, you've seen how easily behavior spreads. One beep, one person. And suddenly, a room full of strangers is following a rule that didn't even exist 5 minutes ago. That's the point I want to leave you with. Not that conformity is always wrong, but that it's almost always invisible when it's happening. It slips in through routine, through silence, through the simple desire not to be the odd one out. But when you know it's there, you get to decide what to do with it. That's the difference. Awareness gives you back the wheel. You can still go along, sure, but at least you'll know why. And that's a kind of freedom most people don't realize they've given up. So next time you're in the room, the meeting, the comment section, the crowd, and something doesn't feel right, notice your body, notice the pause. Ask yourself, is this mine or did I inherit it from the people around me? Because even in a world built on influence, you still have a choice. And sometimes that one quiet choice not to follow is the thing that sets everything else in motion. That's the psychology of conformity. Not just how we copy, but why and what it costs us when we do it without thinking. Thanks for watching.